there and welcome to the September wrap-up. Again, I will be saying this is the most pages that I've ever read in a month. We've cracked 4,000. I have 12 books to talk about, and I'm tired. I'm very tired today, but I have not missed an upload, so we have to get this done. Let's talk about all of these books. I'm hoping it'll be quick. It probably won't be. First, I want to talk about the books that I read for Sci-Fi September, which I actually stuck to the TBR for, which I'm very proud of. The first book that I read for time travel was One Day All of This Will Be Yours by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which I gave 5 stars. I absolutely love this. Its greatest strength is its comedy, which was so well done, and I couldn't believe how much he pulled off in it. I can't believe there were some twists that I didn't see coming. It was just such a fun experience. It's one of the most enjoyable books that I've read in a really long time, and I highly, highly recommend it. I think it would be a great place for sci-fi beginners or sci-fi veterans and everyone in between. I just think that there's nothing wrong with this book. It's about a man who is at the end of time after the causality wars, living his life. I really can't say much. He has a pet dinosaur, which was the most fun ever. It's such a pleasant book. You must read it. I'm just gonna gush about it and explain nothing. The next book that I read for contemporary with sci-fi elements was In the Quick by Kate Hope Day. This one was my bet because I got about 30% of the way through and I DNF'd it. And that was the right choice. But what I did was I went on Goodreads and read the description after that, and it said The Martian meets Jane Eyre. And I was like, how is that gonna happen? I hadn't really been getting any hints of it up until that point. So then I went back and I finished it, and I'm giving it 2 stars. Honestly, I really didn't like it. I could justify giving it 1 star, but I'm not gonna do that because this is my fault. It's about a woman named June who ends up going to an elite astronaut boarding school thing and eventually gets to go into space. And it's really weird. It hits a lot of the plot points of Jane Eyre without any of the justification. Then for short story, I believe was the category, I read A Song for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. Technically a novella, but it is short and a story, so I'm counting it. This is about a society where all of the robots became sentient one day and decided to go live in the woods, and how society has fared after that. It features a tea monk. They basically just go around different towns in their cart and serve tea to people and listen to their problems. And I thought that was the strongest part of the story. I thought the setup of a tea monk was perfect, but I don't think it was fully used in the way that it could have been. Eventually they come across a robot and they form an unlikely friendship, which was very cute. I just think the length of it didn't allow it to do as much as it could have. Lots of great little moments in here. Like, I did end up tabbing it quite a bit, but it wasn't everything that I wanted it to be. I know that there's going to be a second in this series, and maybe I'll get more out of that, but this ended up being just okay for me. I gave it 3 stars. The final category to complete my bingo board was recommended to me, and for that I read Product Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and I'm very confused about my feelings about it because there's a lot to really love in here, but I found that it had no momentum. That was the biggest problem, was I didn't know where we were going. This is about an astronaut who wakes up with no memory. And so there's a while of like, he gets his memory back slowly in little flashbacks, and we get to learn about what his life on Earth was like. And that's interesting, but the flashbacks continue throughout the whole book. Like, at a certain point, the momentum isn't driving forward anymore if we're learning about the past still. And the big aim of this is like, save the world, basically. But it's unclear when we save the world. Like, I think in comparison to The Martian, that had a very clear outline of like, here is where we are, here is where we're going, and it featured both the guy on the planet, whatever his name was, and Earth and the other crew. And there was such momentum there. Like, we knew we have to get this done on this day or else we're gonna fail something. This is just like, have we saved the world yet? And the science that they're talking about isn't like clear enough, and they keep running into little roadblocks where I kept being like, okay, and we can go home now, but then something else would happen. This book also took me over 2 weeks to read it, which has not happened in a very, very long time, other than like maybe nonfiction. That's the other big thing with this book, is it's too big. It's 100 pages longer than The Martian, and I think those 100 pages make all the difference, because around 60% of the way through this, I was losing a lot of steam. Even though there's a lot of really good things in here, I'm giving it 3 stars, which is surprising, but I think there's a lot of fat in here that could be trimmed, and a lot of conveniences because of the way that it was written with the flashbacks. Like, we'd have a flashback to something and then immediately have to use that thing, which is fine in like logical setup and payoff, but they happen too close to each other. If you'd had this memory at the beginning and then used it a couple chapters later, then it wouldn't feel so contrived. But this was like, I just remembered about this thing and we need it immediately. That bugged me. Still good, still interesting. I think a lot of people are really gonna like it. I mean, a lot of people do really like it, but just sort of okay for me. Maybe not. Maybe it's more like high highs and low lows, and over 2 weeks to read a book. I read 12 books this month. Most of them are audio because I was just sort of avoiding this one. Okay, that's everything for Sci-Fi September. Let's talk about the other books that I read for a vlog that you've already seen about reading books that booktube made me buy. Rapid fire. Song of Achilles, 3 stars. Definitely get all of the hype, but it's not really for me in this historical fiction way, and I think Achilles is an asshole. Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas was interesting. It had a lot of things that I really liked about it, but it sort of ended up being a very small story. Let's talk about this more, because I think I also read Act Your Age, Eve Brown this month. It's not similar, but in my brain they're sort of tied together in the way that a traditionally published versus a self-published romance go, and I vastly preferred Act Your Age, Eve Brown. This one just felt like it was lacking a little something. Maybe it was the setting that I didn't really enjoy. This is also a boyfriend's dad romance, and I never fully got on board with that, which is a me thing, I'm sure. This one I ended up giving 3 stars. Act Your Age, Eve Brown I ended up giving 4 stars, but I'm kind of wondering why I didn't give it a 5-star now. I really enjoyed the setting of the B&B here. I really enjoyed the relationship. I thought it was funny and charming. Although another thing both of these I disliked was once the couple sleep together, I feel like all of the momentum in the book is gone, and it immediately switches to a very different tone where it's like, now we're in love, let's commit fully and have babies, and a miscommunication is going to happen right away that break the couple up for a second, and it just loses that fun, lighthearted flair that I was really enjoying. And I didn't enjoy the last 25% of either of these books because of the difference in tone, and that I didn't need this couple to commit right away. I would have been fine with them just having fun, and it feels like the rush to the happily ever after is rushed. Back on track, the last book that I read for that blog was Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Kristoff, and I gave this 5 stars. I'm not surprised. Everyone raves about it. It's worth the hype. I don't really know what to say about it. Watch the vlog if you care, but yeah, 5 stars. Everything else that I read this month wasn't for a video, so maybe I'll take a bit longer to talk about them now. I read 2 nonfiction this month. The first was Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I really, really enjoyed. This is about how to make good habits, and I found it really useful in the way that it's very broad and vague and just sort of a take what works for you kind of approach. It felt very different from the Marie Kondo's book, which I read, which was hard because it had very specific rules. Like, I know we talked about how she had that rule that you should only have 30 books, which is hard. And like where everything should be placed, there's a lot of like, you must do this, this, and this. Atomic Habits is very much like, think about why you do the things that you do, try something out, take what works and leave what doesn't. And I found it really motivating, and I would highly recommend it. It's probably the best self-helpy thing that I've ever read. Not that I've read a lot, but I really enjoyed it. The other nonfiction I read was Don't Call It a Cult by Sarah Berman. This is about the NXIVM cult thing, and it was fascinating. It was such a well done book. The story is wild, just like everything that you want from a cult story, which is gross when it's like real life, but it was fascinating and really well told, and I can't recommend it enough. Both of those books got 5 stars from me. Then I read Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I know in my TBR I said that I was terrified to read this book because sharp objects haunts me to this day. This one, not so much with a haunting. It actually had like a really cute premise where this woman, when she was a girl, her whole family was murdered by her brother in the Kansas massacre or something like that. 20 years later, she's out of money and stuff, and she goes to a true crime conference where people offer to pay her for memorabilia from the family, or like if she can talk to her dad to get more like intel, because these people are still trying to find the case and don't believe that her brother actually did it. And so she's like now solving her own case begrudgingly. That premise just sounds like it could easily become a rom-com or something, but it didn't. But I really enjoyed this one. It had a lot of twists and turns. It definitely got dark, but it didn't affect me in the same way that Sharp Objects did. It deals a lot with the satanic panic of the 80s, which I always think is interesting. I don't really have any complaints about it. It just didn't quite have as much of an impact on me as I was hoping. I think I gave this one 4 stars. I lied. The last book I did read for a video, if you watched my Dear Evan Hansen comparison of the musical book and movie. I read the book for that. It was a very interesting experience. Definitely not something that I think you should pick up if you're not familiar with the musical, but it provided a very different view that I didn't hate. Sometimes I feel like I should have hated it, but I didn't. It's not an especially well written book, and the story itself is kind of flimsy. Like, it didn't come up with the story though, so I gave it a break for that. And it did some interesting things with it. I had a good time, which is what matters, so I gave it 3 stars. And I think that's it. I think that went faster than I was expecting. Was that 12 books? Throwing Act Your Age Eve Brown in there is really screwing up my brain math, but we did it. Those are the 12 books that I read in September. There were some surprises, I would say. Nothing that I outright hated, which is very good. Just a lot of books that I sort of understand, but aren't for me. Which is okay. Thank you for joining me. Let me know if any of these books piqued your interest. I know I didn't do a great job of explaining most of them. I think the problem was I just read the best book as the first one in the month, and everything was kind of downhill from there. So if I have one recommendation from here, it's One Day All This Will Be Yours. So go read it. Or don't. You know, it's your life. I'm done now. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in my next one. I promise it will be better. Bye.